The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the countryside. Alex gripped the steering wheel tighter as the old winding road seemed to stretch endlessly before them. Jenna, sitting in the passenger seat, shivered despite the warmth of her jacket. Mark, sprawled lazily in the back, tried to shrug off the unease, but even he couldn't hide the tension in his eyes. "That house, it looks worse than I imagined," Jenna murmured, her voice barely audible over the crunch of gravel under the tires. Alex nodded, swallowing nervously. "Yeah, it's massive, and empty probably for a reason." Through the thickening fog, the mansion loomed, its jagged towers and broken windows resembling teeth in a gaping maw. The air grew colder as they approached. An iron gate, rusted and twisted, creaked open of its own accord, as if welcoming them or warning them. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, but pressed on. As they stepped on to the cracked stone path, the wind whispered through the overgrown ivy, sounding almost like faint laughter. Jenna's gaze was drawn to a darkened corner near the front door, where a shadow seemed to shift with unnatural life. She blinked, and it was gone. Inside, the house was silent, yet the silence was suffocating. The floorboards groaned under their feet, echoing through the cavernous halls. Dust motes danced in the pale glow of their flashlights. Portraits lined the walls, faces pale and eyes hollow, yet unnervingly lifelike. Some seemed to follow them as they moved, staring with a quiet judgment that made Jenna's stomach churn. "Guys, did you hear that?" she whispered. Alex froze. A faint, almost melodic whisper seemed to echo from somewhere deep within the house. "Jenna, Jenna." Her name, drawn out and soft, made her spine tingle. Mark scoffed nervously. "It's probably just the wind or the house settling." But the air felt different, charged, electric. Every instinct screamed that they were not alone. Hesitating only for a moment, Alex led them further in, where a dusty table held an old, leather-bound journal. Its pages were brittle, and ink had faded with age. Jenna gingerly opened it, scanning the words. "The house awakens when the sun dies. Those who enter after nightfall are never truly free." A sudden draft slammed the front door shut behind them, and the whispering grew louder, now a chorus of low, indistinct voices. Alex tried the door. It wouldn't budge. Panic prickled at their nerves, but curiosity urged them forward. They reached the grand staircase, its banister coated in thick dust, curling upward into darkness. A strange symbol was etched in the first step, almost glowing faintly in the dim light. As Alex stepped closer to examine it, the shadows in the corner seemed to ripple, moving toward them in slow, deliberate waves. Jenna's breath hitched. "We shouldn't be here." But it was too late. The house was already aware of them. Something waited, watching, whispering, patient. And as nightfall deepened, the mansion seemed to breathe, exhaling a cold promise. Secrets would not remain hidden forever. The house seemed alive now, each creak of the floorboards echoing like a heartbeat. Alex, Jenna, and Mark moved cautiously down a long hallway, their flashlights cutting swaths of light through the oppressive darkness. The walls were lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow every step, and the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of something decayed. "Did you see that?" Mark whispered, pointing to a figure at the end of the hall. But when they focused, nothing was there, only the shadows flickering in a way that made the corners of the room feel unnatural. A sudden slam made all three jump. A door at the far end of the corridor had shut violently, though no wind stirred the stale air. Whispers began again, louder this time, as if the house was speaking to them directly. Leave or stay forever. The voices overlapped, indistinct but insistent, sending chills down their spines. Jenna's flashlight flickered and died. Panic surged. She fumbled to restart it, the small beam trembling. "We shouldn't split up," she urged, but Alex, driven by curiosity, insisted on exploring the hidden side rooms they had glimpsed earlier. Mark reluctantly followed, leaving Jenna alone in the hallway. As soon as they were apart, the house reacted. Candles on the walls ignited spontaneously, their flames flickering with no heat. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the ceiling, crawling toward Jenna like liquid darkness. She backed away, her heart hammering, as one shadow detached itself from the wall and hovered in the air. It seemed to study her, watching with intent before dissolving into the dim light. Meanwhile, Alex and Mark found a hidden staircase behind a torn section of wallpaper. The steps spiraled downward into blackness, and at the bottom a rusty padlock emitted a faint, ominous hum. Symbols were carved into the wood, glowing faintly. Mark reached for it, but the whispers erupted around them, echoing inside their minds rather than their ears. "Turn back, you cannot leave." The voices were maddening, warping reality. Alex grabbed Mark's arm. "We need to go back, now." But the house had other plans. Doors slammed shut behind them, hallways twisted impossibly, and they realized they were no longer sure which way led back to Jenna. Each step felt heavier, as if the house itself resisted their movement, guiding them deeper into its maze. Jenna, left alone upstairs, stumbled upon a small study. Dusty books lined the walls, and an old journal lay open on the desk. She read quickly, stories of previous visitors, friends, lovers, families, all lured into the mansion, never to return. The entries grew frantic and illegible, ending with a single warning: "The house watches, the house chooses." Suddenly, a cold hand seemed to brush her shoulder. She spun around, but no one was there. The whispers grew urgent, almost pleading this time, calling her name louder and louder. The air seemed to vibrate with the sound, and she realized that the house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, sentient, and hungry for fear. From somewhere deep below, a low guttural thrum began, resonating through the floors and walls. Jenna felt it in her chest, in her bones, as if the very foundation of the house pulsed with intent. The mansion was no longer just a place. They had stepped into a predator's lair, and the house had chosen to toy with them. The house seemed to pulse with every heartbeat, corridors stretching and twisting in impossible ways. Alex and Mark stumbled through a hallway that had suddenly grown impossibly long, their flashlights flickering against peeling wallpaper and warped portraits. Each step felt heavier, as if the house itself resisted their movement, forcing them deeper into the dark labyrinth. Suddenly, the air around them grew colder, and shadows peeled from the walls like liquid smoke. One shadow solidified into a figure, a pale, faceless woman in tattered clothes, reaching toward them with a twisted, silent plea. Alex froze, feeling the temperature drop so sharply that his breath formed clouds in the air. "Alex! Mark!" Jenna's voice echoed in their minds, distorted and distant. She had wandered into a different wing of the house, finding herself in a room lined with cracked mirrors. In each reflection her image shifted, sometimes older, sometimes with hollow eyes, sometimes screaming silently. A whisper urged her to touch one of the mirrors. Against every instinct, she reached forward, and the glass rippled like water, revealing a hidden passage beyond. Meanwhile, Alex stumbled into a room filled with old furniture draped in dusty sheets. As he pulled one sheet off a chair, the shadow figure reappeared, this time accompanied by the ghostly silhouettes of the vanished family. They moved like marionettes, their eyes dark voids, silently reenacting moments of terror and anguish. One specter raised its hand, pointing toward a locked basement door. The message was clear. This was the source. Mark, trying to keep his composure, found himself trapped in a narrow hallway where shadows began whispering his deepest fears aloud. Every step forward made the whispers grow louder, naming failures, regrets, and secrets he had never shared. Panic surged, and he nearly stumbled backward into the darkness, but Alex grabbed his arm. "We have to face this together," Alex said. Jenna emerged from the hidden passage, breathless, holding a small rusted key she had found hidden in a portrait frame. She realized instinctively that it could unlock the basement door, the heart of the mansion's power. The friends reunited, their relief short-lived, as the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, and the walls of the mansion seemed to shiver violently around them. The mansion was testing them, feeding on fear, trying to make them falter. Shadows twisted into grotesque forms, clawing at the walls and floors. Time itself seemed fractured. Clocks ran backward, the hallway lengthened and shortened, and each doorway led to new horrors. Jenna took a deep breath. "It's feeding on our fear. Don't let it control us." Her words were firm, resolute. She raised the key like a talisman, and the others followed suit, focusing on courage rather than terror. Slowly, the oppressive weight of the house seemed to waver. They approached the basement door. A low, guttural thrum emanated from beneath, vibrating through the floor. Shadows swirled like a storm, forming shapes that almost seemed alive. Their hearts pounded in unison. With a trembling hand, Jenna inserted the key into the lock. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The door clicked. A dark void yawned before them, pulsating with whispers and the shadows of countless souls. Every instinct screamed to run, but they knew they had no choice. To survive, they would have to confront the darkness itself. And the mansion, patient and hungry, waited for them to take the first step. The door slammed shut with a force that rattled the entire room. Dust rained from the ceiling as the walls flexed inward, shrinking the space like a tightening fist. Olivia staggered backward, gripping Mark's arm while Sarah trembled with her hands still pressed over her ears. Dylan stood in front of them, swaying like a puppet held by invisible strings. His eyes, once warm, were now empty holes of darkness. His lips parted slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. It's coming. You have to run. Before Mark could reach him, Dylan was yanked backward into the black behind him, as if the shadows themselves had grown hands. His scream cut off abruptly. Olivia lunged forward. "Dylan!" Mark held her back. "Olivia, no! It wants you to respond." But the house had already started calling again. "Olivia! Sarah! Mark!" This time, the voices weren't familiar. They were layered, hundreds of voices at once, deep and shrieking, young and old, whispering and roaring. The floorboards split open, revealing a pit beneath them, filled with writhing, shadowy arms reaching up like starving creatures. Sarah stumbled back, her heel catching on a recorder. "It's trying to pull us in!" Mark dragged both girls toward the far wall, but the room warped again. The door they came through dissolved into the wall, leaving nothing but pulsing dark wood. The ceiling bowed downward as though something massive pressed on it. Olivia squeezed her eyes shut. "We're trapped! It's going to swallow us!" The house answered her. "One stays. 2 leave." Mark's voice broke. "No! No! You're not choosing any of us!" The shadow surged, grabbing Sarah's ankles. She screamed as she fell forward, clawing at the floor. "Mark, help me!" Mark grabbed her arms, pulling with everything he had. Olivia joined him, sobbing, tugging Sarah upward as the shadows tried tearing her down. The room echoed with Sarah's lung-straining screams, the house's monstrous groans, and the snapping cracks of wood. For a terrifying moment, Sarah's hand slipped. "No!" Olivia cried. But Sarah forced her grip tighter, tears flooding her eyes. "Don't answer it. Don't answer your name. Please." The house hissed her name again, inches from her ear. "Sarah." Sarah squeezed her eyes shut and didn't respond. The shadows thrashed, then released her in fury. The 3 collapsed on the floor, gasping. The house roared, shaking violently as though enraged. The wall split open, exposing a narrow hallway, an exit. "Run!" Mark shouted. They sprinted through the shifting corridor as doors slammed behind them. The house screamed, a deafening, broken, inhuman wail as they reached the foyer. The front door stood open. They burst outside, stumbling into the night air as the mansion's windows went black. The porch groaned behind them like a dying beast. They didn't stop running until they reached the van. But the moment Mark slammed the door shut, his phone buzzed. A new voicemail. The sender's name froze him in place. Dylan. Mark pressed play with shaking hands. A voice, Dylan's voice, spoke softly. "Why did you leave me inside?" A long, slow breath followed. Then the house's whisper. "See you tomorrow night."